Hey everyone! So welcome to a Wartilio video where we'll be reacting to the Lumineth Realm Lords Battletome. My name is Hans, and today I am joined with...
I'm Johann, another Lumineth Realm Lords player.
two out of the three Lumineth
Yeah,
Realm Lords players in our gaming group. And speaking of three, I guess today we'll be reacting to the third Battletome. So how does that make you feel, Johan?
well, third battle tome in less than 3 years. We're definitely a spoiled faction, to say the least.
Definitely, because from what I remember, the first Battletome came out with like the original faction release. So that was like I think 2020 during pandemic season.
Yeah,
So
2020.
yeah, and that came with tech lists, with the Cathalar, with like the core Venar units,
That's correct.
uh, the Warden Sentinels, Dunriders, and the Alarith units. Like from what I remember, and then
Yep.
we've also yeah. So after that, we got a release of Broken Realms tech list, and then the next Battletome, the second one, came out like the next year, which included like new releases for like just basically the whole model range plus the Huracan units. And that Battletome also kind of integrated like the lore from Broken Realms Checklist as well. So that Battletome was kind of just the Battletome, the original Battletome plus Broken Realms Checklist. And then fast forward to like I think it was around a year later, where now towards the end of 2022, we've got a new Battletome for third edition. So that's
Yeah, so
nuts.
it's like, yeah, really quick. Obviously, they've had some mishaps here and there, which caused much uproar in the community. But, it is what it is, and here we are now.
Yeah, mishaps and the argument of which faction deserves what Battletome when,
Yeah.
and just so happens to be us now. But with regards to what we're about to be previewing here, it's gonna make a lot of sense as to why GW might have wanted to release a new Battletome. So in this video, we'll basically be going through our reactions and thoughts with most of the contents of the Battletome, and I'll be detailing it here in our coverage. So we'll be covering battle traits, great nations, command traits, artifacts, spell lores, grand strategies, battle tactics, and our new allies. So obviously we're missing units and endless spells here, along with, let's say, list building and such. But if this video does well enough, maybe you can release a video, part two to this video. What do you think?
Yeah. Part two is a good opportunity for us to discuss lists, potential theory crafting. I mean, with Lumineth as an army, you move one thing, everything else changes. So it's a good idea to do. Hopefully, this video does well, so we get to make it.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. Everything has got to move like clockwork in a sense. It's a faction of moving parts. And if we did do units for this video, we'd be here all day, wouldn't we? Plus, we got a lot of allies too, and that adds into list building for sure.
Yeah, we'll be here all day.
Right, so let's get into battle traits. So for our battle traits, we've got lightning reactions, ether quartz reserves, and great nations.
Mm-hmm.
Let's start with lightning reactions first. For lightning reactions, it's pretty much the same. When it's your turn to pick units to fight, you can pick 2 LRL units to fight, and they can fight one after the other. So pretty good if you have units, 2 units ganging up on something, or if you want to like kind of like mess with the order of who's fighting next and such. And it's nice that they have the clause here where neither can have the strike last effect. And I've never experienced like a situation where I've had 2 units have strike both strike last, but it's good that they have this here for situations where things might get a bit complicated.
Yep. And I'm glad they haven't changed it because honestly, it's such a privilege for us to not having to choose which to prioritize first. It's saved me a lot of games, actually.
Yeah, for sure. It's good too because uh, there are times when we don't have the we kind of don't have the best 1v1s when regards to units. So it's good that in the combat phase we can kind of just gang up with 2 units on one, and then you use make them fight one after the other.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, let's get into Ether Quartz reserves. So each unit LRL unit has one Ether Quartz reserve. It's a kind of like a consumable that you can use once per battle and once per phase. Well, once per battle for that unit, and it's also restricted to being used once per phase. So one unit can use their Ether Quartz, their reserve, to use one of the following abilities at the cost of -1 to their bravery for the rest of the battle. So everything is pretty much unchanged. So you can still use heightened reflexes where you can get +1 to save until the end of the phase. You can still have a heightened senses where you can have +1 to hit for shooting or melee for that phase. And you can still have magical boost where after you roll a casting roll, you could add like +1, or you could potentially re-roll it. But that happens before the enemy attempts an unbind. But as you've noticed here, something is is gone.
Yeah, it kind of sucks that magical insight is gone. Well, I mean, for me, in my games, I don't really use it as much because most of the time, the best use for me, at least, is really heightened reflexes. That free all-out defense without spending command point is huge, especially because you could stack it with Mystic Shield and all-out defense as well. But I guess for other people who likes having two castings in the hero phase, it's a lot.
Yeah, hide and reflex is probably the one that you will you'll probably use in for example if like if you're trying to save a whole unit and they get attacked first, and obviously there's more value to using this while the unit's still at full model count. And magical boost is great too, I suppose, for your like your scenario, especially in the hero phase, because it doesn't really conflict with heightened reflexes as much as, let's say, heightened senses and heightened reflexes in like the combat phase, for example.
Yep, that's well, I don't know actually. I'm a bit conflicted here if it's a good or I mean it is a loss, but I'm not sure if it's a big loss or not because I mean I
Yeah,
don't really use it, but I don't know. What do you think, fellow
that's true
Lumineth
because
player?
I didn't use magical insight as much because you had to declare it at the start of the hero phase to give someone an extra cast, and most of the time I would rather just have magical boost in my back pocket, for that +1 or reroll.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, makes
Right.
sense.
So without further ado, let's move on to the next battle trait. And so before I move on to something like a Great Nations, I do have to mention that Lumineth Realm Lords as a faction is kind of subdivided into different like sub armies, and those sub armies are kind of keyworded with different keywords, and then each of them have different like abilities per keyword. And so how that used to work in the old Battletome is all of the sub army traits were put into the battle traits, and that made the battle traits section incredibly long because you had a trait for the Vanari, you had a trait for Sinari, Huracan, and Alarith. And so that lengthened, just absolutely lengthened the battle trait section and made it very daunting for like me as a beginner, for example.
Yeah, it's a good change actually that they moved these to War Scrolls, so it lessened the need to bring the actual book, and you could just print War Scrolls for it, which is really nice.
And less time looking at a unit and then looking at battle traits, and you can just like look at the unit and then know what kind of abilities it has, like, for the most part.
Yeah, that too is really good.
So, and we've seen a bunch of changes here. I think almost everything here has seen changes. And firstly, let's go with Vanari. So for the Vanari units within the army are the Vanari are kind of like the main military like fighting force for the faction. So, you've got your spearmen, you've got your archers, you've got your ballista, you got your cavalry in there. And their ability is a Shining Company, where if each of the Vanari models in a unit are base to base with two or more other models in the same unit, that unit gets a -1 to hit. Rather, attacks that target it have a -1 to hit. So a bunch of other limitations used to exist for this trait in the old book. So how do you feel about this being an overall buff?
Well, I mean, I mostly play Vanari. I don't have Huracan or Alarith model, so this buff is really good. I mean, before we couldn't charge, we only had a 1 inch pile in. So overall buff, like removing all the negatives, allows us for so much flexibility in how we play. So it's a really good buff, and I'm really glad it happened.
Yeah, and it makes it much easier to understand for someone reading it,
Yeah,
and
for sure.
tons of more flexibility too. You could run, you could potentially charge, you could reform it. It's not as constricting as it used to be, and it doesn't stop islands as
Yeah,
much
yeah.
anymore.
That's amazing. I mean, I also have a lot of mileage with it, like breaking and reforming Shining Company on the fly, like breaking it as you charge, but fixing it as you pile in are really good things to consider.
Yeah, definitely. Tons more flexibility for this one, and still just as good. -1 to hit. Okay, I think we can move on to Scenario Deep Thinkers. So back in the day, Deep Thinkers used to allow a scenario. Sorry, before I get into that, the scenario are kind of the mage class of the Lumineth Realm Lords army, and so they're all of them are basically heroes and casters, and so their ability before was that you could skip a turn, not casting, and then auto cast a spell for 9 on your next turn, and we never used that. Like no
Hmm.
one I know like ever used that unless you played on device back in the day, because there was nothing you
Yeah.
could do.
I mean, I used it, but that was because I had tech list to cast all the important spells so that the Cathalar can chill at the back and then wait for the next turn. But even then, it's really situational because people could just, snipe out Cathalars and tech list back in the day.
Yeah, not doing for something for like one turn and then getting like a casting value of 9 on the next turn that still can be inbound. That's a big risk for sure.
Yeah. Especially because you could get doubled.
Yes. This is Age of Sigmar after all. So that's been changed to once per battle. That unit can auto cast a spell to 9, and that casting value of 9, or rather that roll of 9, cannot be modified. So you can't use things like a +1s to cast or anything like that, but it still can be unbound.
Hmm.
So how do you feel about this change?
This change is actually okay. I mean, they're changing it so that we don't have to skip a turn. And 9 is still a good casting number. I mean, you need to roll 10 to unbind. I guess it gets easier if you're in Zinch or if you're in Seraphon where you have like massive +3, or I don't know how much bonuses you get to unbinds. But for the most part, for almost every other army in the game, it's really difficult to get a 10. So yeah, it's good, and it's even if it's just once per battle, it's viable enough that, or sorry, not viable enough, but good enough for us to use that crucial cast at the right moment.
Yeah, and from what I've read as well, I haven't seen any restriction where more than one scenario unit can use this ability. So potentially you could have let's say two or maybe even more use this ability and maybe get 9 spells popping off at 9s across the board during that phase. Maybe.
Yep. It also works really well with our new unit, the Enlightener. But I guess we'll talk about that later.
Yeah. We've got time later to talk about units. Next, we've got the Huracan. So Huracan are kind of the followers of the Wind Temple, and so they kind of have like a fox motif going on. They're very mobile. Uh, they like their range combat and the wind spells, obviously. And so their ability is a bit different. So basically, Huracan units when they pile in during the combat phase, they can pile into any direction and not just closer to the nearest enemy unit. And if the unit charged, they have an extra 3 inches when they pile in. Um, Ignore the yellow text. I think this is just exactly the same as the trait that they used to have. It's no changes from my end, I think.
Yeah, there's no changes.
Yeah. All right. Next, we got the Alarith. So, uh, it's and the Alarith are the followers of the I guess Mountain Temple. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
And they've got like a cow motif going on. They like endurance. They like being tanky. They like rocks. And so the thing about their trait, enduring as rock, before was that you kind of had to declare mountain stance whenever you wanted to use it, and you had to do it at like the start of the game or the start of a phase or start of a round. And it's weird because, of course, you would kind of just auto declare mountain stance, all the time. There was no
Yeah.
downside to doing it. And so what would happen when you declared mountain stance was that attacks that target the Alarith unit that you declared mountain stance with, um, attacks that target that unit have their rend from turn from -1 to rend 0. And so now you just don't have to declare mountain stance at all.
Yep. So it's a really good change. I mean, obviously, it's one less thing to worry about, one less thing to declare. So that's good. And it's moved to the War Scroll. So if you're reading while playing, if you're not too familiar with the rules, it's easy to spot as well. So it's really good.
Yep. But they did lose Tectonic Force, which was the ability where during the end, I believe it was end of the combat phase, Alert units can kind of shove like an enemy unit towards a direction, permitted that that enemy unit could move to that direction. So they would get shoved, and then the Alarith unit would move closer to that enemy unit after they've been shoved. And so I've always considered that thing kind of fun, I guess, and situational, but I've barely had a chance to actually use it in a practical sense. How about you?
I didn't have the practice for it as well. It's very gimmicky indeed. And 1 inch shove most of the time, right? Correct me if I'm wrong, it's 1 inch. It's not enough to actually move units out of an objective, especially if they're huge units like, I don't know, maybe when your
It
Stone
kind
Guard
of,
gets charged by a Maw Crusher or something. I mean, they're just dying at that point. But yeah,
yeah,
it's very
that's
gimmicky.
true. I do recall it being a 2 inch shove and then a 1 inch move towards that unit. Um, I'm not 100% sure, but it's not in the tome, so it's not really something we have to remember, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. It also that ability, that shove, also has the downside of if you're trying to shove that enemy unit and don't have any space to move, then your shoves for nothing, I guess.
Yeah. Though to add, I'm still not a fan of actually ignoring one rend. It's not reducing one rend, right? So, for example, if they are getting hit by a unit that has rend 2, it's not going to be rend -1. It's still going to be rend 2. Of course, if you're in the Metrica sub-faction, that's different. And we'll talk about that later. But yeah, I just
Yep,
wish that they reduced rend instead of ignoring rend.
that's true. The wording is very, very specific, very deliberate here with what GW is trying to do with these Alarith units. And I guess the last thing we have here on the sub-army battle traits that were moved to War Scrolls is Absorb Despair, which was an ability that the one unit, the Cenari Cathalar, had. And so it's odd that only one unit had that an ability for only one unit was present in battle traits, and a good thing it's moved for I guess you know easier reading for like a player.
Yeah, they're definitely trying to make the faction easier to play, and moving Absorb Despair. I mean, Cathalar is the only one that can do it anyway. Moving it to the War Scroll is a good step forward.
Yep, like dude, what I wanted out of this book. Like I've told people, we can get nerfs, we can get buffs, but at the very least, I want more concise rules writing with this book because it was incredibly confusing.
Yeah, for
The
sure.
battle traits part. All right, let's move on. Yeah. So once per phase, if a friendly unit wholly within 18 use the course reserve, a friendly Cathlar can prevent -1 bravery to that unit. Instead, give it to an enemy unit within 18. That unit cannot be affected by this more than once per battle. Uh, ability is the same. The ability is the same rather, and it's been moved to the Cathlar's War Scroll. Right, next, Great Nations is a fancy word for our sub-factions. And like the other 3.0 battle tomes, with regards to sub-factions, so command traits, command abilities, and artifacts for sub-factions are gone, which was kind of a thing they had for older battle tomes. So how does it make you feel?
Well, I mean, I for me really like the flavor of the faction, and even though yes, Games Workshop is trying to streamline everything, a lot of what makes Lumineth builds unique are what's in their sub faction stuff. Like, for example, goading arrogance, Zytrex get seeing stone of Selenar, and other stuff like that. It's what made them really unique, and stripping these away sort of makes them a bit more bland than usual. But yeah, I mean, I get what Games Workshop is trying to do.
Yeah, I'll have to agree with that too. I wish the options were there as well. Though I did dislike how the artifacts and command traits that accompany the great nation you chose. You're forced to kind of take them for your general. They're mandatory. Is the only thing I don't like.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, let's get in with it. Starting with Geometrica. So with Geometrica, nothing has changed. It's still the same. Um, I think my wording here on the PowerPoint might not be the best because it says negate, but essentially the enduring as rock trait for Alarith units, it's no longer just rend -1 attacks towards that Alarith unit uh turn into rend 0. It goes up to rend -2. So attacks targeting that Alarith units within Geometrica have the rend -2 turned into 0. And also Alarith Stone Guard can be battle line. So nothing's changed, right, Johan?
Yep, nothing's changed. But again, earlier with what I've said, it would have been nice if they reduced Rend instead of actually ignoring Rend. Because right now, with of course the power spikes that is happening with the newer tomes, we've been getting a lot of units that have Rend 3. And it these units that have Rend 3 are often really good hammers and beat sticks. So yeah, we're sort of in trouble still. But again, Stone Guard did get buffs this book. And I haven't play tested them yet, so take my word with a grain of salt. But yeah.
Yeah. So enduring as rock, as you say, it does make them durable, but high rent still goes through, and mortals still go through, and mortals wounds are just happen to be getting more and more common. It seems.
Yeah, definitely. Almost everyone's getting sixes to mortals now.
Yeah, not just us anymore. We're no longer
Mm,
special, I guess.
yeah.
Okay, with the next Great Nation, CR, the same. So units start with 2 Ether Quartz reserves instead of 1. And this was my pick as the strongest trait in the old tome, and it's still kind of is right now, though it's missing it had great command traits. It had a great command trait, great command ability, and a great artifact, sadly. So how do you feel about
Yeah,
CR?
the loss of the Sayari artifact, I forgot what it's called.
I think it was a perfect blade,
Yeah,
is
Sayari
what it was
Perfect
called.
Blade. And the loss of goading arrogance is huge. But the biggest blow to this sub faction, I think, is the command ability, where 2 units can spend their reserves instead of just one. And that sort of negates the unit or the sub faction ability that allows units to have 2 reserves of Aether Quartz instead of one. It's still a good sub faction trait, though.
Yeah, it's still good. Unfortunately, a victim of streamlining sub factions.
Yeah.
All right, let's move to your your favorite, Ilyatha, who's gone through a bunch of changes. So, uh, once per turn, two Vanar units can use their reserves in the same phase instead of one, which kind of is, you know, which is very similar to the command ability that you mentioned that CR used to have, but it's basically been pushed to Ilyatha as a free, battle trait. But Ilyatha did lose the +2 to their bravery gun, and the Vanari unit sharing a command to another Vanari unit within 3 inches is gone, which is what used to be the battle trait, I believe.
Yeah. So as for me, I mean, this is my favorite faction, and for me, moving the Sayar battle trait to Ilyatha isn't as thematic, I think, because isn't as thematic and mechanically mechanically good, because with this faction you only really get one Aether Quartz per unit anyway, and so using two and not having extra is sort of a big blow. And of course, +2 bravery is such a good thing for battle shock and other things. But the biggest blow for me here is sharing a command trait to both units. There used to be such nutty combos you can pull off with this.
Yeah, like double unleash
Yeah,
hells.
double unleash hell. One thing is like the biggest. It is the biggest deterrent to other factions from charging Eliatha LRL armies, and this was basically my nuclear deterrent.
Yeah, Ilyatha's definitely feeling the streamlining. Um,
Yeah, it
in
hurts.
my yeah, in my opinion, I think the new battle trait. Uh, I guess for me, it's too early to say whether it's good or bad. I'm leaning to good, but definitely gonna miss that command ability sharing.
Yep.
Right. Let's move on to my personal favorite, Zytrek, who got a bit of a side grade in my opinion. So their trait was changed to +1 to casting, dispelling, and unbinding rolls for wizards. And what it used to be was it was only +1 to those rolls for the first rules of those kind for that wizard in the Zytrek army. But now it's just any cast, so that's great. And one less thing to remember. But Zytrek armies no longer get an extra spell known for wizards, and they all do not all universally know the spell Overwhelming Heat anymore. So great for consistency, uh, but for flexibility, I guess it's a bit having the choice of the extra spell lore and just having everyone know like the same spell, Overwhelming Heat, as an added spell on top of spells you already knew. It's a bit of a blow, but I do appreciate this consistency. What do you think, Johan?
Yeah, it's consistency is, I think, the name of the game for us as LRL, and I think it's, well, I don't know. It feels weird. It's a good change that they made it consistent, but it's also sort of bad that they removed all of the extra stuff we get, like the extra spell, overwhelming heat. I think the biggest blow here is losing Seeing Stone of Selenar. It used to be so good with Zytrek as a faction, because usually you take Techless, and then the general who gets the Seeing Stone of Selenar has a 4-up ward because of that. So it's huge.
Yeah, definitely. And it's so hard to get good ward saves now from artifacts and command traits. So uh, having that having that nuts artifact was definitely a big help. Okay, without further words, we can move on to Alumnia, who I believe you have had experience with, especially on our stream where you brought a ton of wardens against your fellow Lumineth Realm Lord sibling Iza.
Mm-hmm.
So with Alumnia, their battle traits changed as well. So if the base of each model in a friendly Alumnia Vanar unit is touching the bases of two or more models in the same unit, and if each model in that unit is within 6 inches of an objective, each model in that unit counts as two models when contesting that objective. So I guess a shorthand way of saying it is if the Venari unit is in Shining Company and it's in an objective, it counts as each model counts as two models. I think is like a way of saying it.
Yeah. Well, this is actually one of the best subfaction abilities right now, especially because we're going to say goodbye to Galician veterans soon. And so expert conquerors won't be a thing anymore. And having this as just static for us is a good change. Though I will definitely miss run in charge and the pregame move. It has given me nutty plays. Like how do we say this? Making 30-inch plus charges like across the board with the pregame move, speed of Hysh, and then run maximum run with at the double, and then run in charge were amazing plays and tend to take my opponents out of their comfort zone. So that loss is huge. But this actually allows for a bit more flexibility in how we handle objectives.
Yeah, and like you said with the Galician vets, there was also the threat of bounty hunters dealing extra damage. So for and while two models per model isn't as good as three models per model when contesting objective, it does help with it does help that damage is negated because you didn't put that unit into that battalion for for this
Mm-hmm.
season. And that pre-game move was actually something that was so different from everything else that um, was just an unexpected battle trait for Lumineth.
Yeah,
But
for
I think
sure.
they're trying to GW's trying to rein in abilities and like all of the rein in abilities, traits, artifacts, all these like elements closer to like the design of what they think Lumineth Realm Lords should be. I
Yeah,
think.
for sure. Definitely with the removal of run in charge and claim the field, or what used to be claim the field, which is a pre-game move for 3 units. They're making us a bit more castly, which is sort of the identity of the faction as a whole.
Yeah. Without anything else, let's move to Helon. So Helon kind of got a it was kind of a side grade, I guess, because their trait did get better. +1 to attacks for missile weapons of Helon models within 6 of enemy units. So it's no longer within just 3. So this does affect this will automatically just affect Unleash Hell, period. You kind of don't have to do as much measuring. You can just measure if you would do Unleash Hell and then just like add the +1 to those attacks. So that's great. And it allows a bit more flexibility with regards to placing your uh, missile units like around like an enemy unit. You kind of don't have to be within engagement range to have those bonus attacks anymore. So that's interesting. But Helon did lose that command ability. Gone. I think was Gone like the Wind,
Yeah.
where at the end of the combat phase, if that Helon unit fought, that unit could make like a move. I think it was a move or retreat. So,
Yeah, it was a
what are
move
your
or
thoughts on
retreat.
this? Yeah,
It's
what are your thoughts on this?
it's huge. Admittedly, the Gone Like the Wind trait is what made Helon Helon, especially since it's abusable with our number one beat stick, Techless. Well, I mean, I guess currently, right?
Currently, I guess, yeah.
Yeah.
It's great too that for example, units like Wind Chargers and Wind Chargers, Spirits of the Wind can get quite danger close with enemy units and then shoot them with extra attacks and not have to worry, and have not have to like wait for like the next turn where they're within engagement range to have extra attacks to shoot them, something like that. So mixed feelings about Elon, I suppose.
Yeah,
Uh,
definitely mixed feelings. Though I did play a game earlier where I used Helon, and I've gotten some mileage out of it. Well, I mean, just a bit. I shot into Aether Wings because I had no choice, but yeah, an extra attack within 6 is huge. Like suddenly a unit of 20 sentinel is now shooting like what 36 shots when they get charged. It's big.
That's true. That's double because Sentinels only have one shot.
Yeah.
Right. Moving on. So command traits. So command traits are kind of sorted into four subcategories. Command traits for Venaria only, for Scenario only, for Wind Mage only, for Stone Mage only. So a bit similar to other Battletomes that have organized their traits in such a way. So let's start with Venari. So Grand Strategist, it's been changed. Add one to the heroic leadership rule for this general, and it no longer just automatically gives a free command point at the start of a turn.
Well, add one to the heroic leadership role. I guess they're trying to, well, not trying to, but they are nerfing it a bit. But still, heroic leadership on a 3-up is still really good. And I
Yeah,
think it's still, yeah, it's still quite a viable command trait to use.
yep, still viable. Sucks that it's not free, I
Yeah.
guess. Next, we got Consummate Warrior. Once per turn, you can reroll one hit, one wound, or one save roll for this general.
For me, it's not a command trait that would see a lot of use. I mean, we don't really have good Vanari sort of combat heroes. I mean, our best combat heroes are our uniques, not our Vanari units. And I guess even our unique Lord Regent, Lurior, shouldn't really be in battle as much. Well, I guess that's my opinion that he shouldn't be in battle as much. So I don't know how to feel about this. I'm certainly not taking it in any of my builds.
Yeah, um, I guess someone who likes putting their general into the fight could make a use of this. Though I agree with you in not putting the general within combat range of most units because they don't have a lot of wounds. Is the
Yeah.
thing.
So if you're an LRL player that likes putting Vanari Lord Regent in combat, I mean 5 attacks is still 5 attacks, right? Especially
Yeah,
with flaming weapon, then more power to you.
yeah, and I do believe that their damage got increased, but we can
Yeah.
have that conversation for another time when we start delving into the units of this battle tome.
Yeah.
So next we got Almighty Blow. So this thing, I believe used to be a command trait in Emetrica,
Yeah,
and
it
it
used
works
to
the same as
be.
it used to.
Yeah.
Yeah. So instead of piling in and attacking, you can pick one enemy unit within 1 inch, and on a 2-up, that enemy suffers d6 mortal wounds. So thoughts on this?
Thoughts again, I'm not a fan of putting our Lord Regents into combat. So maybe if we do get more Vanari heroes that are more suited for dueling, like I don't know, maybe we're getting a spring book soon. We'll see.
At this rate, I guess
Yeah.
so.
But yeah, I
Uh,
mean, as of now, the only good trait here for me is Grand Strategist.
yeah, I can see that. Going back to Almighty Blow though, since I think the Lord Regent, unlike a normal day, can out damage the. I haven't done the math yet, but I think they can out damage Almighty Blow because and it also gives you a flexibility of piling in as well. Because with Almighty Blow, you gotta be within one. Uh, you can't pile in, and then you gotta roll a 2-up, and then you could roll anything between 1 to 6 mortal wounds. I think just attacking with the Lord Regent right now is more consistent.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that too. Especially because, again, you can buff it like Flaming Weapon, and the mount can also attack. So, yeah, sometimes I've had games where the Lord Regent doesn't actually do damage, but the mount does a lot.
Yeah.
And
And
you could
when I've
also just
used the
roll a
Lord,
1.
that's true. And when I've used the Lord Regent, he's usually one of the last people standing, and he's so fast, and he's a great objective capper,
Yeah, that too.
like clutch. Yeah. Okay, let's move on. So for scenario only, Got Spellmaster. Once per battle, this general can use magical boost without using an Ether Quartz reserve. So Spellmaster used to be a free reroll to cast. So definitely more flexibility here now too, because with magical boost, you not only have the reroll, you also have the +1 potentially after the cast.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, definitely more flexibility. Though I will miss the free reroll to cast. That was huge. But I guess that's sort of mitigated by our shrine, if we have one. So
Yeah,
yeah, mixed feelings.
mixed feelings. Lore Master. Now this one, um, so giving this one to a Scenari unit gives them 2 extra spells known from the lore of Hysh, and it used to be they would only know 1 extra spell from the Lord of Hysh. So straight up buff.
Yeah, straight up buff, and it works well with one of our artifacts, I believe. I think Silver Wand is still there, allows us to double cast with our Scenari stuff. So yeah,
Yeah,
it's good.
yeah, definitely. Last we got Fast Learner, get an extra unbind, and the second time this general unbinds, you can reroll the unbinding roll. This used to be a mandatory Zytrek command trait. Uh, used to kind of come in clutch because with Fast Learner, let's say on the enemy hero phase, the enemy hero casts, you can unbind with the Zytrek hero, and then you could use like the reroll from the shrine to reroll that first unbind, and then if the enemy decides to cast again, you could use a second unbind and then reroll that one. So um, you got reroll unbinds. You got 2 guaranteed reroll unbinds, like hypothetically, like in that situation. But uh, I don't think I think this one's a bit outshined by something like a spellmaster or a lore master. What do you think?
Yeah, definitely. I think for me, if you're trying to be competitive with Lumineth, you're certainly going to have a toss up between some Spellmaster and Lore Master.
Yeah,
Though I think the best trait here is Lore Master.
I can see that because if knowing extra spells means you could also have redundancies because if you on a normal day our units would know one spell each, and if one unit is taken out and only that unit knows the spell, then you can't use that spell for the rest of the game. So having redundancies does help if things get wiped out. Though I could see the argument for Spellmaster because Spellmaster can provide better consistency, I believe.
Yeah, it is better consistency, but I think I'm a bit turned off by that once per battle clause. I'd rather have something that I can use the entire game.
That's true. So, scenario commentary, it's looking good, I guess.
Yep.
Okay, next. So, for these are just only for the Wind Mage. And so, first up, we've got Grand Windrider. This wasn't here in the old book, I think. So, this general's Wind Leap ability increases from 6 inches to 24 inches. And for those who don't know, Wind Leap is an ability that all Wind Mages have, where Wind Chargers within 6 of the Wind Mage gets a move characteristic of 16 and fly. And so that's 16 inches up from 14, and the Wind Chargers didn't fly. Well, Wind Leap. So not the best, I think.
Yeah, not the best. Though I guess the extra 2 inches would help your wind charger synergies. So I mean, just every little bit helps actually with this faction.
Yeah. I suppose if you're running a lot of Wind Chargers, Grand Wind Rider might be the best. Might be the best pick
Yeah,
because man, dude, the default Wind Leap range of being 6 inches, that's almost impossible to keep consistent for like the entire game, especially when you're moving units around because that would mean your wind mage has to be around the wind chargers all the time for like the whole game if you want to apply a wind leap consistently.
yeah, definitely. It's you could get into sticky situations before where you have to be dangerously close with your heroes, and that's usually a bad thing for us.
Yep. Next, we've got Swift. Swift is also in the old book. Plus 3 to the general's move characteristic. Kind of redundant. Wind Mage is already fast. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. With mages already fast, no need for +3 to their move.
Okay, I
Especially
guess
because
we
you can
have
run either
our.
way.
Yeah, you could always run too. You can even charge if you really want. I
Yeah.
mean, if you there's lots of ways to get plus 3 movement. Okay, next we've got a gravity defying champion. Once per battle, you can reroll one run roll, one charge roll, and one casting roll for this general. This used to be a mandatory command trait for Helon called Skyrace Grand Champion. What do you think?
Again, not usually a fan of once per battle effects, but there can be some niche cases for it, I think. I mean, rerolling crucial run rolls, charge rolls, or casting rolls is big. Could impact the whole game. But for me, I'm not a fan of it. I mean, I like command traits that I can use for the entire battle.
Yeah, though, in my opinion, if you're not gonna go, if you want to make if you want to make your Wind Mage your general and you're not bringing a lot of Wind Chargers, you probably want to take Gravity Defying Champion because you can reroll those rolls you mentioned. Reroll one run roll, one charge roll, and one casting roll. It's not or you can reroll. You can save your you can reroll any one of those like casting rolls. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it's not like either or. So you have those at your back pocket, I think.
Yep. So, what do you think? If you bring Huracan or Helon, especially because we have another person in the Portillo team that plays Huracan.
Yeah, we see you, Isa.
Yeah. What do you think? If you would build a Huracan force or a Helon force and you'd take the Wind Mage, what command trait would you get?
If I really wanted to bring Wind Chargers, a Grand Wind Rider, it just makes life easier.
Yeah, I take Grand
Personally,
Wind
I
Rider too.
yeah, I don't know. Maybe I like Wind Chargers. You know, if I can make them work because they've been changed with the new book.
Yeah.
But usually I just in my old builds and probably how I plan to use the Wind Mage now. Gravity Defying Champion would be more than enough if I want him as my general because I typically bring him around for the teleport.
Ah, right.
Yeah,
Especially because that teleport spell is really hard to get.
yeah, I think it's an eight. The Castle is an eight, I believe.
Yeah.
Okay, so next set of command traits. Okay, the Stone Mage has a bunch of new traits. So let's start with Tectonically Attuned. During that shooting phase, General can give +1 attack to the to a Spirit of the Mountains Geomantic Blast. Uh, that's a thing.
Yeah. So it
Yeah,
it is a thing. I mean, it's during the shooting phase and it's only targeting one Alarith Spirit of the Mountain. Now, I haven't had much experience with Alarith yet, but I don't know how many Spirit of the Mountains do you usually bring if you'd make an Alarith list?
uh, this book might change it, but I would probably only bring one most of the time.
All right. So I
Yeah,
guess you'd sort of benefit with a +1 to attack, but for me, it's a bit weird because I mean you could still whiff with the attacks, so it's
yeah,
less consistent.
and the Geomantic Blast isn't why you bring the mountain in the first place, and it's
Yeah.
not the best. I don't recall it being the best shooting attack either. It's just a thing they happen to have.
Yep.
Yeah. So next up, we got enduring at 3 the general wound characteristic. Boring, but I don't know. You might want to take it, but at the end of the day, we do have to remember that when we're thinking about command traits in the book, we're thinking about are any of these better than Master of Magic?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
Master of Magic is really good.
yeah. Master of Magic is really good. It's tough. The competition's stiff with the core book.
Yeah, especially with the this command trait, enduring. We really wouldn't want our squishy mages to be fighting anyway. So yeah, I'm definitely not taking this command trait.
Stone Mage doesn't have the best save either. I think it's a 4 up or a 5 up.
Yeah,
And if something wants it dead, if your opponent wants it dead, 3 wounds won't usually make a difference. Because, in my opinion.
yeah, that's true.
Okay, next we got Unyielding Toughness. At the start of the hero phase, pick one friendly Stone Guard unit wholly within 6 of this general. Add 1 to that unit's win characteristic until the end of the phase. Interesting.
Yeah, so this actually makes our Stone Guard 3 wounds each instead of two. So, I mean, that's a big buff. You give it to a block of 15. If you'd bring a block of 15, there's suddenly 45 wounds. I guess. Yeah, there's suddenly 45 wounds. It's huge, but you have to be careful, or we have to be careful, because apparently, if suddenly, like after when it comes to our next hero phase and they go drop down back to two, it could cause some Stone Guard models to die.
Yeah, there's even a clause in this trait that I didn't that I wasn't able to add into the PowerPoint where it says when the next hero phase ends, models could die. So GW is very conscious of that of that. So yeah, the reduction of wounds characteristics could be bad. Though I think at max you'll probably just have one Stone Guard unit die because let's say like hypothetically um, you allocate wounds, and then one Stone Guard has lost wounds, and he's down to one. We hit next phase. Wounds characteristic of all the models of like the whole unit drops down by -1, and that model would die. I think hypothetically, if my math checks out, correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, you're right. So definitely something to be careful with, especially if you're trying to keep that one Stone Guard on that objective alive. And then, suddenly your next turn it just dies because of the miscalculation. Hopefully it doesn't happen, something to be careful about.
Another thing to be conscious about is that six. The friendly Stone Guard unit has to be wholly within 6 of the general.
Yeah,
Uh,
that too.
if you want to double reinforce uh that if you want to like sorry rather if you want to single or double reinforce, do bear in mind start doing your pre-measuring tested on the battlefield because Stone Guard models are 32 mils, so you just gotta be careful with how you careful with how you move the Stone Mage with the Stone Guard when you want to apply Unyielding Toughness.
Yeah, 6 inches in theory is huge as a radius, because of course that's a 12-inch diameter. But in practice, it's gonna be quite difficult to keep things together, especially because you wouldn't want your Stone Mage anywhere near the front lines anyway.
Yeah, I mean, one bad positioning error could result in, let's say, like a Maw Crusher charging your Stone Guard unit. They pile in 3 inches towards your Stone Mage, your general dies, and they can score
Yeah,
like a battle tactic from that or something, like a
they could
hypothetical.
also just smashing and bashing if they can destroy your Stone Guard.
Yep. Yep. So interesting, but I guess we gotta be careful. Okay, let's move on. So for artifacts, it's organized the same way as command traits are, and let's start with Venari only. So let's start with CRE Pobble. Bearer starts with an extra Ether Quartz reserve. Before I continue, I do believe all of these artifacts are the same as they used to be. But
Mm-hmm.
what are your thoughts on CRE Pommel?
Sayari Pommel +1 Aether Quartz is nice, especially in more Aether Quartz starved nations. But I think if you're in Sayar, especially if you put it in Vanari Lord Regent, you'd have 3 Aether Quartz. So I think it's a bit overkill. Actually, I don't know. I don't know how I feel. I mean, I
Uh,
don't run Lord Regents anymore because I have tech lists, but yeah, what do you think?
Potentially, I think if let's say you're a bit low on heroes. Let's say you have like a Lord Regent and then someone else. I can see there being merit to having a +1 Ether Quartz reserve, even if you're in CR, because so long as the Lord Regent has an Ether Quartz reserve, it's +1 to attacks against him. Not to mention,
Sorry, -1 to hit against him.
sorry, yes, sorry, +1 to attacks, but yeah, -1 to hit against him. And I'm trying to remember if he still retains the +1 to cast
He does. I think
for
he does.
greater. Okay, then he still does have the +1 to cast on Greater Power of Hysh if he has the Ether Quartz reserve. So having like that reserve on him for as long as possible would be really helpful. And I think maybe potentially having 3 Ether Quartz reserves on that on him could you could potentially see could potentially be having a rerolls like every hero phase and having Greater Power of Hysh like on all the time potentially, but it's to invest that much in like one one model. I'm not too sure about, but I guess it's a thing you can do.
Yeah, and I guess
Yeah.
that also helps out with the Lord Regent's tankiness. I mean, you could spend 3 Aether Quartz for 3 turns to do all out defense without using the command ability. So it's okay.
Yeah, it's opportunities, I guess.
Yeah.
So next we got San Louis Amulet. The bear can run in charge. It's fine, but I don't know how to make a Venari Lord Regent a beat stick. Like as you mentioned earlier, he's
Yeah,
not
that's true.
the.
It's very difficult, I guess, like you mentioned earlier, for clutch moments where the Lord Regent has to steal an objective. If there's a cheap screen, like maybe, I don't know, ghouls or zombies, small units, then it is viable to run in charge. Especially because the Lord Regent runs what? Regular move 14 inch?
Yeah, 14, I believe.
Yeah, with a good run and a charge, you can get pretty far.
Yeah, so uh, probably not going to be taken.
Yeah.
Uh, Next we got the Waystone. Used to be a mandatory artifact for Alumnia. Once per battle during the movement phase, instead of making a normal move with the bear, pick a point within 12, set up the bear within one of that point, and more than 3 inches from all enemy units. So basically, a very short range teleport, but it lets you get close with enemy units. So, um, very interesting in my opinion. What do you think?
Yeah, it's very interesting. Again, very situational. You wouldn't want your, I mean, for me, I wouldn't want my Lord Regents to be in combat anyway. But I guess if, for example, you get a double turn, you just need that small push to take out a unit, then I guess it works. Or I guess it's also a way for you to remove your Lord Regent from danger. I mean, it's still 12 inches, so situational,
Yeah,
but I'd honestly rather take Sayari Pommel.
yeah. With Waystone, I guess you can see some tech where the Lord Regent can teleport within 3 of an enemy you really want to kill, and then he kills them, or he can teleport away from like an enemy, or there's a lot of ways to use Waystone, I think, but it is a once per battle thing, and the Lord Regent isn't like the best beat stick either, as we have kind of mentioned, but I wouldn't say it's terrible.
Yeah, same. It's not terrible, it's just that we have better options.
Yeah. So if that goes without anything else, let's move to scenario only. So I think Phoenix Stone, Silver One, and Rune of Santhoy used to be in the old book, but we're seeing some changes here. So let's start with the Phoenix Stone. With the Phoenix Stone, once per battle, you can try to negate a wound or mortal wound that would slay another friendly LRL hero within 12. Roll a dice on a 3 up. The wound is negated. Heal D3 wounds to that hero. Any wounds that remain to be allocated are negated. So used to be any hero within range. So now the bear themselves can't be counted, but at least now it also heals. So side grade.
Yeah, side grade, and it sort of works better for our castle builds, especially because Teclis gets focused down hard in the early turns, just because everyone hates Total Eclipse, except us, because I guess we're using it. But yeah, there have been countless games where bottom of round one, sorry, Teclis gets Thunderbolt volleyed and shot again, and he just dies. So this is huge, especially with that heal.
Yeah, I agree. It would suck to have like a spell that negates a killing wound only for your hero to go down to 1, then someone arcane bolts him. It's a pain in the ass that could happen. Uh, I guess that's a very good like application, like what you mentioned, and it can apply to other heroes too. Though I do have to be I would be careful about the once per battle clause because you can use it at a crucial moment, and then uh your enemy happens to have like an extra unit that can shoot or extra damage they could deal. Um, so when it works really well, I think. But when it doesn't work, it doesn't work in my opinion.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, if someone brings, I guess, case in point, Stormcast, right? They bring two long strikes. They
Oh my
can
god, yeah,
Thunderbolt volley and then just shoot with one long strike. Wait for us to pop Phoenix Stone and then shoot us again. We're still dead.
yeah. Wait for us to pop Phoenix Stone or have like a bit of damage spill over from the Liberator's Mortal Wounds ability.
Yeah.
I think at the end of the combat phase, JP will correct me. He's gonna PM me or something. Um, but yeah, something like that. But lots of ways to do damage spillover, especially with you could have 1 to 3 wounds on him on like the hero you're trying to save, and it's very easy to remove that.
Yeah.
You know,
Even
on
with
that
the
hero.
ward saves, actually. Like, for example, I don't know. How does this work? If, for example, Teclis dies with Protection of Teclis on, does he come back with Protection of Teclis on?
Well, he still would have it because he's not the wound that would slay him is negated, so he's still alive. He still has it on, so he
Ah,
would
right.
still make those saves hypothetically.
So I guess
Yeah,
if I don't know if you're a Teclis player like me, we have a prayer of hope that he survives.
yeah, yeah. And with Teclis, like Johann, you guys would probably be wanting to cast Protection of Teclis almost all the time, like 90% of the time.
Yeah, 90% of the time.
Okay, next we got Silver One, so that gives the general an extra cast in the hero phase. So boring but practical. There's synergies that you mentioned earlier with the
Yeah, with
command trait.
Spellmaster. So with two extra spells, you could cast something extra. And with Deep Thinkers as well, I can imagine some plays where you bait out once per game unbinds, if I remember correctly. Sorry, I've been fighting Stormcast for weeks now because my friend uses Stormcasts. And you could bait out that auto unbind at that Imperatant, I believe. And then do Scenari Deep Thinkers to have something that's cast on a 9. It's really good.
Yeah, really great. I would just be wary of investing a lot into a scenario hero because they are very squishy. Is the
Yeah.
only thing. I'd just be careful. Okay. Next we got Rune of Senthoi. It's gonna change plus three to attacks for one of the bearer's melee weapons. Used to give +1 to unbinding and dispelling rolls, depending on how many scenario heroes are within 6. Not the one I wanna take.
Yeah, it's also well, I don't know. I mean, I think if I am running a Lore Seeker, +3 attacks might not be too bad, but still, it's very scary to put it on our squishy wizard case.
Yeah, I mean, even if you I remember the Enlightener having a decent, I guess, melee attack profile. I don't think +3 attacks would make them very good fighters. So Rune of Senthoi gives +1 to unbinding and dispelling rolls for that general, depending on how many scenario heroes are within 6 of a said general. So I think that's one per, right?
Yeah, that's one per. Though I am also wary of investing this much into one of our scenario heroes. I mean, our wizard case is very squishy, and you take out the scenario hero that has the rune of Senthoi, then a lot of the synergy is gone.
Yeah, and imagine fighting an army that doesn't have wizards. Then you brought Rune of Senthoi for nothing, and I guess there would be situations where even if you unbind unbind like a spell of an enemy hero, it doesn't hurt them. It doesn't hurt like your enemy's plans that much. You know,
Yeah,
and same
there
could be
are.
said for like an endless spell that you dispel with this.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there are a lot of factions out there where their spells are not as crucial as us. It's just win more for them. So it's not as important for them.
Yeah. Though if you have a buddy, and I guess this is a very like out there hypothetical. If you're with a buddy, you're deliberately counter picking each other, and he's playing Zinch, you bring Rune of Santoy, I
Yeah, if
guess.
he's playing Zinch or
Yeah.
Slan, like Seraphon, you get
Yep.
you can match his plus what 3 plus 4 to his unbinds and casts.
That's the scenario artifacts, I suppose, without anything else. Okay. Next, we got the Wind Mage only artifacts. So we got Wind Blast Fan, same as before. Once per battle at the start of the enemy movement phase, pick one enemy unit within 3. That enemy unit must retreat. I think this is still pretty good despite being a once per battle artifact.
Yeah, it's pretty good, especially because Huracan, especially, are squishier than our other units. Again, problem for me is that it's once per battle, but if you can time it right, if it's very crucial, then it can pay off really well.
That's true. I'm sorry. I think I changed my mind. Um, because you have to be within 3, which is essentially engagement range, and that's very hard to uh, it's hard to I don't think you would be caught in that situation often if you're good at maneuvering your wind mage, because you wouldn't wanna for him to end up within 3 of like an enemy you want to make retreat during the enemy
Yeah.
movement phase. You will have to have been there like the turn before, so it's a bit pulling it off is a bit tough, I think.
It is definitely a bit tough. I guess there are some situations where Huracan Wind Mages, against all odds, survive,
Ah,
right?
yeah.
But still, you really wouldn't want them in combat.
Yeah, I guess if you castle, an enemy is bound to be within 3. But how often is it gonna be an enemy you really need to have retreat? I guess because you also might want to kill it, or it's not a worthy target. You know.
Yeah. Or your Wind Mage is already dead.
Yeah, most likely scenario. Next up, we got the Windstone. Once per battle in the shooting phase, pick one enemy unit within 18 inches that is visible to the bearer and roll a dice. On a 1, that's 1 mortal wound. On a 2 to 4, that's 2 mortal wounds. On a 5 up, that is 4 mortal wounds towards that enemy unit that you picked.
Again, Windstone, it's once per battle. I guess if it's trying to eliminate a really pesky hero, it's useful. But I'd rather take something else that would buff our units. Sadly, all of our artifact choices for Wind Mages are once per battle. So yeah, I don't know. Maybe if I would bring Huracan, I'd make someone else a general, not the Wind Mage.
Yeah, uh, definitely. Although he might be a must take if you're trying to run a lot of wind chargers and Helon
Yeah.
potentially. Though I think you could do better than Windstone. All right. Next we got Buffeting Aspergillum. Okay, I think I read that right. Once
Yeah.
battle at the start of the combat phase, pick one enemy unit within 3 inches, subtract 1 from hit rolls and wound rolls from that unit until the end of the phase. This used to be a 5 upward save in the old book.
Yeah, so it's a straight up nerf. I mean, I prefer the 5 up ward save. It gives our squishy wind mage just a bit more survivability. I mean, subtract 1
Yeah,
from hit rolls isn't huge, especially if you're facing like what 20 plus attacks on that wind mage. Yeah,
yeah,
it's tough.
and you gotta be within 3,
Yeah, that
and it
means you
has
have
to
to be in combat.
happen. Yeah, and it has to happen at the start of a combat phase. So I guess in a scenario where you're charged, or let's say you're a bit smart about it, you put your wind mage behind the wall of wardens. Those wardens are buffed with protection spells and such. Mock Crusher charges the wardens. You know, um, he does his charge damage. You pop buffeting Aspergillum. You subtract those. You apply that on the Mock Crusher. I don't know. I guess that can happen, but
Mm.
again, you gotta be within three. Is
Yeah,
the
and
thing.
it's a bit weird because I mean wardens already have shining company. Yes, it can be negated by all out attack, and then again buffeting asperagillum -1 to hit. But you know, if a Maw Crusher wants to charge through your wardens, it's getting through most of the time.
Yeah. Uh, I miss it being a ward save is what I'm gonna say.
Yeah,
Uh,
I also miss it
so
being a ward save.
for this, it's I think there's no clear standout here, but if you really had to, which among these would you bring for like a
If I
one main
really
general?
had to, it would be. Ooh, that's tough. I'd take Windstone just because, well, it's extra damage, really. And the others is just a bit more difficult to pull off, especially because you have to be within combat for it. And Windstone is just for shooting, which is okay. I mean, there were times where my targets actually lived for just a couple more wounds, and I guess Windstone once per battle would be really crucial for that. But for me, right now, if I would run Huracan or Helon, I'd bring a Wind Mage, but that Wind Mage will certainly not get an artifact. I'd give it to someone else.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And your pick with Winston, I have to agree with because it's achievable compared to the other two. I think
Yeah,
it's something you could actually pull off, and like you said, every bit of damage counts in Lumineth because I don't think we can mortal wound bomb as effectively as before,
yeah, we
and
can't
we might have to
anymore.
spread it out across phases.
Yeah, and DPS has always been a big problem of ours. Like, even before people say, I mean, Lambent Light, Power of Fish is such a good combo. That is why, I guess spoilers, they removed it. But yeah, it used to be such a good combo. But even then, right, it's good at taking out one good threat. The reason why Sons of Behemoth was our Predator
Yeah,
is because we don't have enough damage to deal with all the threats.
Suns and Horde armies.
Yeah.
We're scalpels all the way through. Scalpels, not hammers. Okay, for our next set of artifacts. So for the Stone Mage, we've got the Hearthstone Amulet. That's a 4-up ward against mortal wounds. Used to just be a 5-up ward save against any kind of wound.
Yeah, well, for me, ideally, you wouldn't get your Stone Mage into combat. But if I had to choose between 4-up ward against mortals or a generic 5-up ward save, I'd pick the generic 5-up ward save.
Yes, definitely. Can't argue with that. Uh, I don't know. No, yeah. It's there, I guess. Hearthstone
Yeah.
Amulet. So next up we got Molten Talisman. So +1 to wound rolls for melee attacks by friendly Alarith wholly within 12 inches of the bearer if the bearer did not charge in the same turn.
Yeah, for me, this
Interesting.
is the best artifact in for Stone Mages. It's pretty much a must take, I think, because you wouldn't want to be charging with a Stone Mage anyway. So it's more or less easy to fulfill the condition. And +1 to wound rolls for friendly Alarith. That not just includes Stone Guard, that includes our mountain cows. So yeah, it
Yes,
helps a lot.
actually, yeah, definitely the probably the must. No, definitely the must take here.
Yeah.
Lastly, we have the Magmic Hammer. So that's +1 to mortal wounds caused by arcane bolts cast by the bearer. It's It's uh it's interesting. I like this mechanically and conceptually.
Yeah, I like it too, but I guess in practice, it's not good for me, especially because you could just fail the arcane bolt or it can get unbound. And of course, why would you take Magmic Hammer, in my opinion, if there's Molten Talisman, right?
Yeah, and if you have Magma Hammer and you're trying to keep your Stone Mage away from melee, uh, I guess you would be doing uh two mortal wounds at like 12 inches, and then he could be doing D3 plus one when he gets close. But
Yeah, I don't think you want to get
yeah,
close.
Stone Mage is probably not gonna. Stone Mage might be casting other things in other things besides Arcane Bolt too. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, right. So let's get into the bread and butter. So our spells. We got the lore of Hysh, we got a lore of winds, and the lore of high peaks. And I think GW kind of forgot that tech list knows all of the spells from every spell lore because
Yeah, he
they
did.
didn't put in the book.
Yeah, GW forgot about that, and I guess FAQ's coming soon because Games Workshop just released a teaser for their Battle Scroll update featuring Lumineth and Zinch. So I guess a lot of the updates will be for us.
I hope so. Um, Otherwise, I guess Teclis knows less spells than Marathi and Alariel. So hopefully we get that patched up soon.
Yeah, and he's going to be overcosted now.
God, 700 points and you know only a handful of spells. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Okay, so first up, let's go with Lore of Hysh. Speed of Hysh, casting value of 5, double the move characteristic of one friendly LRL unit wholly within 18 inches, invisible to the caster until the next hero phase. The same, thank God.
Yeah, thank God.
Same.
It's one of our most useful spells actually, and before this book, it's one of my must take spells, especially because I played Alumnia as well. So it's huge. Allows us a lot of mobility.
Okay, thank God they did not touch this. This is like changing the recipe to the Big Mac or something. So
Yeah, actually.
good.
It's also really good with the Enlightener.
Yeah, you gotta potentially you roll well, potentially apply speed of Hysh to two different units.
Yeah.
Okay, next up we got Solar Flare. Casting value 8, pick a point within 10, and is visible to the caster. Dispels an endless spell on that point. If there is a unit on the point, roll a dice for each model. 6 ups deal 1 mortal wound. So it no longer deals -2 to casting, dispelling, and unbinding rolls within 12 inches of the point. So I think that change was so we wouldn't be shooting ourselves in the foot if we were to move closer to that point.
Yep, but for me it's yeah, it is a big nerf, especially because Umbral Spell Portal exists. Usually you'd
Yeah,
shoot it through the spell portal anyway, and it messes up a lot of the other casting armies. So it's, I mean, of course, we are sort of the spellcaster nation for Order, and it was good for us, both mechanics wise and thematics wise, that we mess up other casting armies as well.
yeah, and -2 to casting, unlike an enemy wizard, definitely makes it easier to unbind if they manage to get that cast through, which is difficult with the -2.
Yeah,
So
that's true. Though I do still see this possibly in play. Like maybe if you're playing with your friends, you're trying to counter build, and he brings Zinch. I believe Zinch starts with a couple of endless spells immediately on
yeah,
the field now. So
yes,
Solar Flare, they just delete them immediately, and sort of double cast to the Enlightener is still huge.
yeah, and I do believe this is our only potential horde clearing spell too.
Yeah, because they remove the other spell.
Yeah, yikers. Yeah, sad it got nerfed, but it's still here.
Yeah.
Next up, we got sorry, my mouse. Next up, we got Protection of Hysh, casting value of 9. Gives a 5 upward save for friendly units wholly within 9 inches of the caster until the next hero phase. Can't be cast the same hero phase as Protection of Techless. Only change being casting values increased from 8 to 9.
Yeah, it's a nerf definitely. But the keyword here is friendly units, which means your allies can be affected, especially because we got new allies in this tome. But I don't know.
Yep.
Would there be situations where you'd cast this over Protection of Techless if you had both available to you?
Definitely Protection of Techless, man.
Yeah, for sure.
Definitely.
Huge 18-inch range, 5 upward, the only for LRL units.
Yeah. Without Techless though, this is really great. Not sure if it would be a must take. Just depends on your strat, but a very great, solid spell.
Yeah, I can see this being used in Alarith builds where you don't necessarily take Techless. Maybe just one or two scenario wizards to cast Protection of Fish. It's pretty good.
Yeah, you'll be negating up to -2 rend, and then you have a 5 upward save too.
Yeah, and considering
Okay.
that the casting value is now 9, yes, it's harder for us to cast, but with Scenari Deep Thinkers, right? We can
Yes,
autocast on a 9, and it's now more difficult
exactly,
for them to unbind because they have to roll a 10.
exactly. Not to mention, it's not hard for us to get bonuses to cast anyway. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's a
Rerolls as well with the Shrine.
yep. Okay, for part two of the Lore of Hysh, got overwhelming heat. Casting value of 7. One enemy unit wholly within 24 inches and visible to the caster has their move characteristic half. Roll a dice. If it's equal or greater than that unit's save characteristic, it suffers D3 mortal wounds. So, this used to be a Zytrek unique spell. Uh, the thing about taking Zytrek, every wizard would know this spell. So everyone from the wardens to your heroes, everyone and their mother who was a wizard knew this spell when you would ring uh Zytrek. And so I've always just considered it in the old book as something that would be a really good option for when you need it, but not necessarily something that you would take if you had to pick other spells, you know.
Yeah, same with me. Especially because even though in Zytrek everyone knows the spell, you can only cast it once. But moving it to the spell lores, and of course, eventually with that FAQ, Techless would know it just naturally. I think it allows us more flexibility.
Yeah, that's true. Also gives access to other great nations as well in
Yeah,
the
you
mystical
can
lore.
also just shoot it through Umbral Spell Portal again, buy your unit some time to slowly scalpel out other units.
Yeah, though it does have to compete with other really good spells.
Yeah, that's
It's the
true.
hard part. Okay, next up we got a Ethereal Blessing, cast value 6. One LRL unit wholly within 18 inches can ignore modifiers to save rolls until the next phase. Unchanged basically gives a unit Ethereal.
Still really good, especially for the casting value. 6 to give Ethereal is really nice.
Yeah, especially with I guess a unit of wardens if you don't want to be safe stacking them, or if you figure out the math in your head, enemy has a ton of rend anyway, just give them Ethereal Blessing,
Yeah,
and then maybe even a ward save.
or I guess if you're using Stone Guard Alarith, you sense an impending Wa coming out, right?
Yeah,
You can't dodge that with
yes,
Ignore Rend too, so you just might as well Ethereal.
exactly. And it helps that it's great that the casting value is so low also. Okay. Next up, our boy Lance's favorite, Total Eclipse. So that's a casting value 9. Opponent spends 2 command points instead of 1 for commands until the next hero phase. So only changes the casting value is increased from 8 to 9.
Yeah,
Great to
you
see you
either
again, Total Eclipse.
you either like it or you hate it. I mean, for me, I like it, and almost everyone I face hates it. Again, CV increased from 8 to 9. It's a double edged sword. It's definitely harder for us to cast. But
Yep.
we get bonuses anyway with the Zytrek and Techless. And with Deep Thinkers, it just made it harder for other opponents to unbind us.
Man, yeah, Deep Thinkers guarantees that Total Eclipse will pop off is the
Yeah.
thing. That that is that is something to watch out for.
I mean, even
Jeez.
if it's like once per battle, you can bring multiple scenarii anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. God, imagine just bringing like a bunch of Scenari, having them cast Deep Thinkers, one cast Deep Thinkers every turn just for Total Eclipse. That's
Yeah,
insane.
it's
No, I
insane.
want to do it. It's crazy, but it's something you can do to really piss someone off.
Yeah, especially because like four, if you bring like for example four scenario heroes, right? Your opponent, I mean, if you, I guess, with the exception of you not taking care of your positioning, your opponent can't really kill four scenario heroes in one turn. So yeah, it's gonna be really annoying.
Yes, I agree. And notably, we do not have Lambent Light anymore. F's in the chat for Lambent Light.
Yeah, definitely. F's in the comments as well. And it's definitely a tool that will be missed.
That's what I wanted to ask you. So obviously, for like us players, Lambent Light is awesome. All right, like it's
Yeah.
the best thing in the world. But I wanted to ask if like what your thoughts are with it being, let's say, a source of like negative play experience for like someone else.
No, I get it that it's a source of negative play. A lot of people bring this one huge centerpiece that sort of their army hinges into. Like for example,
Yeah,
sometimes you'd bring Nagash or Alariel or Kragnos without other Maw Crushers and stuff like that. And yeah, it hurts seeing your piece go away, but
for sure.
it also helps out our army a lot because, well, we only can really deal with one thing at one time. So for example, case in point, Sons of Behemoth players, they really don't mind. Like, yes, we'll kill one Gargant, but we can't really deal with the three other Gargants that player has. So I don't know how to feel about this. For me, I miss it, and I think that with good play, you could negate Lambent Light. But yeah, it's tough that it's gone. I'm definitely going to miss the spell.
Yeah, before we continue, for the people at home, Lambent Light was a spell with a range of 18, and I think the casting value was like 5 or 6.
Yeah,
I think it
five
was
or
like around that,
six.
5 or 6. And essentially, you target one hero within 18. I'm sorry, you target one enemy unit within 18, and then missile attacks that target that unit can be re-rolled.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, missile attacks that target that unit, they can have their hit rolls re-rolled. And
Yep.
so what we used to try to do was shoot, was have Lambent Light on one thing, point every single sentinel at that thing, fish for mortal wounds, and then repeat every turn. Like that would be like the go-to strat for Lumineth
Yeah, and
back in the day.
well, if that unit wasn't within 18, you could always just shoot it through Umbral Spell
Umbral
Portal.
Spell Portal. Yeah, that was the I think that was both of our like potential turn one strats. Umbral Spell Portal, Lambent Light through Umbral Spell Portal, Sentinels, since they have a range of 30, and they can ignore a line of sight. Guaranteed something is gonna die.
Yeah.
So yeah, Lambent Light also helped out allies too, because it affects the enemy unit, and the rerolled missile attacks, it's not keyworded at all. So any and all missile attacks on that enemy unit can be rerolled. So you can have like let's say Namarti Reavers, and they have a lot of shots, and you can just have them reroll their hit rolls of their many shots on like the enemy unit if you bring them as like an ally, for example. Hypothetical.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I will miss this. I mean, I've said it countless times. I will miss this, but I also understand why they removed it because Our new allies are, wacky. I guess
Oh
spoilers,
my god. Yeah.
right? If
Yeah.
Lambent Light was still
Right.
there, I just get long
Yes.
strikes.
Good lord. Okay. Yeah, Lambent Light, definitely a menace for the game designers too.
Yeah.
He's from a balancing perspective. Yeah. So goodbye Lambent Light, but it had to happen. Okay, next up, Lord of the Winds. First up, we got Howling Gale. So casting value of 8, one enemy unit within 12 and visible cannot issue or receive commands until the next hero phase. Wording changed from use or benefit from command abilities. So, I think it's a buff because of the wording.
Yeah, it is. It is. And it's still a really good spell. I'm happy they retained it. It's anti-shooting tech, anti all-out defense tech. So yeah, it's nice. Helps out with the damage. Stops us from getting killed with Unleash Hell, especially because we can charge now with Shining Company. It's a lot.
Yeah, and I do think this could, depending on the scenario, you could potentially shut down. Correct me if I'm wrong, but you can stop a wall with this, right? Or you
Oh,
can't.
I'm actually not sure about that.
Yeah, but
But
I know that
if yeah.
something like a Vex Feast Day, I think that's a command ability.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah,
I
I
think that's
think
a
it
command
is.
ability. You could potentially shut that down also.
And then again, enemy units within 12 inches is still a good range. Obviously, you can still shoot it through Umbral Spell Portal. So yeah, it's still a good spell.
Yeah. Costly, but we have ways to increase casting, so it's fine.
Yeah, that too.
Next up, we got Healing Zephyr, casting value 6. One LRL unit wholly within 18 inches and visible can heal up to D3 wounds. So this thing used to be called Calming Zephyr, and the unit also used to benefit from not having to take Battle Shock tests until the next hero phase. So straight up nerf for this one.
Yeah, straight up nerf, especially because, well, I guess spoilers again. You don't have emotional transference anymore. So we're going to have bravery problems down the line.
Yeah. For the folks at home, emotional transference was an ability where you know, potential you could potentially stop a battle shock test by
And
using a Cathalar and picking a friendly Lumineth Realm Lords unit.
yeah, and then transfer that battle shock roll penalty, I guess, to another enemy unit. Now, since we don't have that,
Yep.
and we have for a for an elite army, we have pretty low bravery. So yeah, it's gonna be tough.
Yeah. Man, we used to have Calming Zephyr, emotional transference, and then
Voice of the
inspiring
mountain,
presence. Yeah, inspiring presence, voice of mountain, just things to stop battle shock and well, now
transfer
it's
it.
a
Yeah, bravery
yeah,
bomb someone.
river bomb someone. So battle shock mitigation is definitely a bit gutted for the tome. Okay, next up we got transporting vortex, cast value of 8, teleport one Lumineth Realm Lords unit wholly within 12, and then set it up 9 inches away from enemy units. It cannot move in the next movement phase. So you're just your bug standard teleport, which is welcome and it's great.
Yeah,
Fantastic. Uh it is really good. Teleporting something big and slow like a cow, or repositioning shooting units like, let's say, sentinels, or putting blobs of wardens on an objective. Transporting vortex is fantastic.
yeah. Not to mention that the range is unlimited as long as the initial 12 inches for the target unit is there. It's big.
Yep, a big, especially since we have a lot of slow important units.
Yeah.
Okay, next up we got Lore of High Peaks. So I was personally looking forward to this the most because the old spells kind of were meh. So let's start. Unbreakable Stoicism, casting value of 7. Pick one Stone Guard unit wholly within 12 inches and visible. Until the next hero phase, that unit's crushing blows ability causes mortal wounds at 5 ups instead of 6. So, crushing blows, for the folks at home, is kind of like it works the same way as some metal weapons does, where it procs mortal wounds on sixes for stone guards weapons. So this is kind of their power of Hysh, except stone guards not being wizards, they can't cast it on themselves, and they would have to rely on a caster like on like let's say Techless or a stone mage to cast unbreakable stoicism for them. What are your
Yeah,
thoughts on this?
and it also sucks that, of course, they're not wizards, so only one wizard can cast this, and it's not spammable. I mean, would have been nice if it was spammable, but I do see it being in use in, I guess, big blocks of Stone Guard, maybe blocks of 15 would benefit from this the most.
Yeah,
Again,
blocks of
Bounty
15
Hunters
in meta.
exists. Yeah. Again, Bounty Hunters
Yes.
exists, but luckily not for long, hopefully.
Yeah.
So we
Uh,
could see play with Unbreakable Stoicism.
and GHBs always change. Battletomes last for years, unless you're us.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. But this is interesting because you could potentially. I think the book, the designers are kind of guiding us towards building like a big stone guard blob and throwing every single perceivable like buff on them through like stone mages like command traits, spells like unbreakable stoicism, not to mention like the other benefits that a stone guard could have. I think this might be the direction they're trying to like guide us towards.
Yeah,
I think.
especially because based on past statistics, Alarith hasn't seen much play, and this is a step in a good direction.
Yep, definitely. Next, we got Crippling Vertigo, cast value of 6. Pick one enemy unit wholly within 18 inches of the caster invisible. If that unit tries a normal move, charge move, or pile and roll of 2d6, and if it's greater than that unit's bravery characteristic, that unit cannot make that move. So you have had experience pulling off crippling vertigo before.
Yeah, I have. It's definitely a bit harder now because we don't have Voice of the Mountain anymore. Which, I guess Voice of the Mountain gives -2 bravery to all enemy units board wide. It makes Crippling Vertigo a bit easier to land, but I can still see use in this. It's useful, especially because Overwhelming Heat is now a faction spell available to everyone. So you could Crippling Vertigo one thing, you could half the movement of another, and then if you have a Cathalar, right?
Yep.
Forgot what the spell is, but it's like Crippling Vertigo as well. You just target that other unit, stop 3 units on their tracks. Still useful. It's a bit difficult to pull off on elite units though, and
Yeah,
undead.
it's some hoops you gotta go through. Maybe if you want to build around it, you could potentially make it work. But like you said, uh, a lot of armies are not gonna be worried about their bravery.
Yeah, like the entire Death faction has 10 base, I believe.
Yup, yup. Okay. Next, we got Living Fissure. So casting value 7. Pick 1 point within 18 inches and visible. Draw a line from the caster's base to the point. Roll a dice, and for each unit the line passes. Sorry, roll a dice for each unit the line passes. 2 ups deal 3d3 mortal wounds. Okay, so the casting value increased from 6 to 7, and the range increased from 9 to 18. So I think it's way easier to pull this off now.
Yeah, it's so easier to pull it off. I never casted this before usually because 9 inches isn't as much. I mean, I guess you could still shoot it through Umbral Spell Portal, but we just had better options back then. So yeah, don't know how to feel. I'd definitely take, I guess, Crippling Vertigo if I put a Stone Mage in a Vanari list, or if I'm bringing Alarith, Unbreakable Stoicism is better.
Yeah. Another thing too about Living Fissure is it doesn't discriminate between ally and enemy. So be careful where you're pointing that thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's true.
So yeah, I guess it wraps up our thoughts on Lore of High Peaks. I pretty much just agree with everything you just said. Unbreakable Stoicism. If you want to bring Blob Stone Guard, Crippling Vertigo, otherwise. Okay, next. So let's get on to the match play rules. Starting with grand strategies. So we've got four. First one, Vanari Assault. Have four or more Vanari units in the battlefield, and the enemy general is slain. So you would need to have this all at the end of the battle. So what do you think?
It's tough. I mean, four or more Vanari units, we have to invest in squishy things, especially with bounty hunters in play. Like three, if
Yikers!
you're
Yep.
running Vanari, either way, these Vanari units will be your battle line, especially because Warden makes either Sentinels or Dawn Riders battle line. If you bring Senari, they make Blade Lord's battle line immediately. And they're just Galician veterans. And because this this season has a love hate relationship with infantry, it's very difficult to pull off, especially because bounty hunters exist.
Yeah, and I mean, even out of season, uh, you're gonna have to. It's a bit difficult to have four or more at the end of the battle because sometimes you can just get like tabled or most of your army destroyed, and you're left with like one or two Vanar units, and it's usually the Vanar units that take up the bulk of like getting hit in the face or being the ones that the enemy wants to target because I think that's the majority of our killing power. That's through Vanar units.
Yeah. Especially if you bring techless lists like me. Techless lists have like max 4 or 5 Vanari units. You take one or two out, then that's over for our grand strat.
Yeah, four or five if you really wanna push it. Optimally maybe less than five. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So this one, I guess we could say it's difficult to pull off. Probably not the one we would take.
Yep.
So next up we got Scenario Illumination. And so for this one, there should be friendly scenario unit in each quarter of the battlefield. Um, thing is, does not say wholly within. So end of the battlefield, end of the battle, put a scenario unit in the center of the battlefield where it hits all four table quarters. I guess that counts as scoring this, huh?
Yeah, it does count as scoring that. It's the same wording as show of dominance, where there's just has to be a Galician veteran unit at the center of the battlefield. And for me, it's a toss up actually between Scenario Illumination, of course, that's one model versus possibly a unit of 20 or 30. I don't know which one I'd take. Of course, Galician veterans are a bit hot in the eyes of enemy players. They usually take them out easily. But Scenarios are also really squishy. So I don't know how to feel about this. I don't know which one I'd take.
Yeah, scenario illumination. It's weird because I think definitely a trade-off. On the one hand, easy to score if a scenario unit survives, but at the same time, scenario units are key pieces that people would want to take out, and they're squishy. So, uh,
Yeah, especially
it's a,
with deep thinkers now and the ability to cast Total Eclipse consistently for the entire match. It's very scary. Very ballsy if you pull it off.
yeah. If you could play keep away with your scenario and then have them in the perfect spot to pull this off at the end of round five, then go for it, I guess.
Yeah, and I guess if
Uh,
all things go well for you, you take Techless and a Scenari, you get bottom of round 5, you just plop a
yeah,
Scenari unit in the middle with teleport. Yeah, you'd score it.
if yeah, if you're a positioning god, I guess I guess get
Yeah.
this one. Yeah. Right. Next, we got something for the Alarith. Before I continue, I just noticed that each of the grand strategies kind of correspond to like the sub armies, so that's really interesting. Okay. Back to Alarith Aftershock. have two or more friendly Alorth units contesting two or more objectives on the battlefield. I think I like this one.
Yeah, I like this one too. It's actually the easiest out of our grand strats here, especially because the buffs to Alarith, and there aren't a lot of battle plans that have more than three objectives anyway. So yeah, it's really good.
Yeah,
Most of the
and
time,
the
these
word
three objectives are right almost next to each other anyway.
yep, and the wording for this isn't like the like each like two or more, and then each of them have to be like on different objectives or anything like that, or or let's say you need three units for like three objectives or anything. It's just have two or more friendly Alert units. Just have them contesting two or more objectives on the battlefield. So I guess you can just like mix and match, and so long as you fulfill these, wording requirements, you've scored it.
Yeah, and I think the good part is it's contesting, so you don't actually have to win on
Exactly,
points. So yeah,
exactly. I mean, even if you have like let's say one cow or like maybe even one stone mage accompanied by like let's say one guy from like a stone guard unit survives, you can still pull this off like if they're positioned right. So yeah, definitely the best one.
mm-hmm.
Lastly, we've got Huracan Cyclone. Have three or more friendly Huracan units within 6 inches of the same enemy unit on the battlefield. uh
It's tough. I mean, Huracan was already nerfed in this tome, and this grand strategy doesn't help, especially because you just redeploy out and you're fine.
yeah, and it's three or more friendly Huracan units like Uh, and their Huracan units are relatively easy to get rid of, especially later in the game when you have less units to contest objective with, and you might be forced to have your Huracan units like start contesting. It's very
Yeah,
hard to have three or more survive,
we
and
also
within
lost.
like yeah,
Yeah, we also lost quite a bit of our survivability tools with Huracan, which we'll talk about later.
yeah. Talk about later. All right. So, grand strategies. What are your overall thoughts?
Overall thoughts, it's actually quite difficult compared to the grand strategies of other factions. Like 2, 3 weeks ago, I fought against Daughters of Cain, and I guess a bit of a strongly worded description of their stuff. Sometimes it can get quite brain dead for their battle tactics and grand strats. Ours actually quite a bit more difficult to pull off.
I think the OK players might agree with this, might
Yeah.
agree with that definition. Yeah. Man, these are overall. I think yeah, I'll have to agree. These are tough to pull off. Probably just gonna take the generic grand strats for most of the time. I think.
Yeah. I mean, even if scenario illumination is there, it's easier to score show of dominance with just a big block of Galician veteran units. Especially because Alarith Stone Guard has been buffed.
Yep. Uh, I know unless the next GHB has grand strats that are very 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 difficult to to do, but uh, with the trend of how GW kind of makes the core or the GHB stuff often better than what we get like in the Battletome
Mm-hmm.
and in Battletomes. Uh, not sure that might happen, but yeah. Okay, so let's go into battle tactics, huh? So our first set of battle tactics, uh, we've got a priority target. So pick one enemy monster on the battlefield, slay it with a Star Shard Ballista, and you score this battle tactic. What do you think?
It's dicey for me, especially because you would want Sentinels and Ballista together to maximize the range. I guess spoiler to their War Scroll, they can add 6 inches to their ranges when they're within 12 of each other. But it's difficult because even with the absence of Lambent Light, Sentinels can still have a massive amount of killing power with them. So you have to be really careful, especially because Sentinels just could just kill that unit outright, and then you won't score the tactic with the ballista anymore. It's
Yeah,
tough.
because like with Sentinels, let's say you're on a power of Hysh, and then let's say in like a unit of 10 Sentinels, you're gonna be averaging like 3 mortal wounds for that 10. And then if it's
Yeah,
a unit of 20 Sentinels, you're gonna be averaging like I guess like 6 or 7 if like my math is correct. But I guess
not
like
counting the
around,
non-mortal wound hits, of course,
yeah, not
because
counting the non-mortal wound hits. That's right. And so uh and you have to get a killing blow with a Star Shard Ballista is the tough part.
yeah, even though they
Yeah.
buffed the Star Shard Ballista, so that, I guess, spoilers once more, they deal flat 3 damage on enemy monsters. It's just 3 damage.
Yeah. And I think they also have an additional attack, right? Is that correct? I'm trying to remember.
Oh, I can't actually remember. We'll take a look at it later. But yeah, 3
Yeah.
damage against monsters. If you're fighting low HP monsters, it's okay. If you're trying to shoot into a full HP monster, it's almost impossible, I think.
Yeah, I think this is a case where you're suffering from success. I think you might overkill it. So,
Yeah.
but again, then again, battle tactics, these battle tactics, including this one, just good to have in the back pocket, I suppose,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
In case you really need it. Next up, we got to conserve ether quartz. Pick one enemy unit and one LRL unit with an ether quartz reserve. That enemy unit must be destroyed by the LRL unit that you chose, and that LRL unit that you chose still has at least one ether quartz reserve. So this is an interesting one. A bit, it's in my opinion, it's interesting. It's achievable. You might have to be No, it's quite good. I think it's quite good.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts?
I've
Yeah.
actually had experience using this battle tactic 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Lightning reactions really helps out a lot in achieving this battle tactic. Like, for example, you take a mix of units, you charge a full health unit with what I did last time was charge it with Dawn Riders and Wardens. Of course, Wardens are our best hammer and best anvil right now. And Dawn Riders
Yeah.
don't really deal the damage they are supposed to be dealing lore wise. So it helps out a lot. Like lightning reactions, Dawn Riders to soften them up, or Sentinels to soften them up,
Yeah.
and then just finish them off with lightning reactions with Wardens. It's relatively easy to do.
Yeah.
Of course, you could
Uh,
suffer from success once more, but it's
and
not as scary
overshoot
as
it.
priority target.
Yeah, definitely. Very kill securing, I guess, in the combat phase would be easier because over the course of like the phases of a turn, um, you have a lot of opportunities to like chip in damage also.
Yeah,
And we
and
have a we have killing power to make this happen. And
we
that
do.
doesn't always have to be a unit that's at full strength. It can be like one model or
Yeah, it could be one model, and let's not forget that Eltharion exists, and he could just
yes.
absolutely destroy a
Yes.
hero.
Yeah, or even a mountain. Yeah, a
Yeah,
mountain cow,
actually.
sorry, a mountain spirit. Or even Teclis. Teclis can do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So great. Conservative Ether Quartz is great. Next we got Blind the Enemy. 4 or more spells are successfully cast with different friendly LRL units in this turn. Man, and I thought Conservative Ether Quartz was good. Blind the Enemy is also pretty good.
Yeah, blind the enemy is pretty good. Especially if you're in Zytrek, it gets super easy. And with just Scenari Deep Thinkers, guaranteed
Yeah,
casting. And if you bring Techless, that's more or less another spell to be guaranteed because it has
yeah,
to be
because
different units.
yeah, and it doesn't really like say like how many spells should be cast by like each unit. You could have Teclis like do 4, and then
Yeah.
you could have another unit. You can have another unit like cast 1, but that still counts as like 4 because you can count 3 from like Teclis and then 1 from like the other unit.
Yeah, that's really good. Especially because Techless and Selenar keeps that +1 to casting buff. And along with Zytrack, that's like +2, right?
Yeah. And if you want to back pocket this battle tactic at the end of the game, I mean, if you, oh no, at the end of the game, or maybe even like mid game, if you don't have as many like casters, or if you're like scared of the odds of your casting, then just go for like low, I guess low casting value spells.
Yeah.
You know, you can still do arcane bolts, you can still do mystic shields. Those still count.
Yep. Power of Hysh is still just
Yeah.
on a 6.
Yes, Power of Hysh. Yeah, Power of Hysh, which like of all the Venari, which a lot of the Venari units have, and and that's like a backbone unit.
Yeah.
You know, so blind the enemy, fantastic. No other words for it. All right, let's move on. So next we got Elemental Supremacy. Pick one enemy hero and one elementary unit. So for the folks at home, the elementary units are you know, the wind spirits and the mountain cows. So far, so far. So pick one enemy hero and one elementary unit that has at least one ether quartz reserve. That enemy hero must be slain by that elementary unit. Good. I think it's good.
Yeah, it's good, especially because mountains still deal like what 5 damage untabled per swing. Rend
Yep.
2, it's amazing. Our Huracan units, our foxes, sorry, they still have massive minor hero killing potential.
Yeah, still great at sniping. Uh, I guess this is I'm not sure every army or every build would be using this, and this might not be the best in every situation, but um you know, this is great, and this is actually something that this is just great and great to have, period.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, especially because it's a battle tactic that we can keep in our back pocket. We have other options as well,
Yep.
so I guess you can look for a minor hero that hasn't heroically recovered and just shoot him off geomantic blast or shooting with the foxes
Yes.
or just run
Yes, I
into it
agree.
with mountain. So yeah, it's good.
And on a side note, conserve ether quartz and elemental supremacy would be really good at CR because you have an extra ether quartz reserve, you know. So
Oh yeah, that works. Also with
yeah.
I guess a Venari Lord Regent with a Sayari Pommel, you'll have three
Yes.
Aether Quartz.
Yes.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah. And the Venari Lord Regents, despite not being the best beat sticks, you know, they can still do some damage.
Yeah, I mean, 1-on-1 against other enemy minor heroes, they can come out of it on top.
Yep, especially with buffs. Okay, next we got Hysh Made Manifest. Two or more endless spells from your army are on the battlefield. Great. This is this is great.
Yeah, actually, that's
Gosh.
it's insanely easy to do
Oh my god.
with
I,
Umbral Spell Portal, always a staple. No, well, not always a staple,
Jesus.
but a really good staple. And as for
Yeah.
me, my staple is Emerald Life Swarm. So yeah, it's incredibly easy, especially because just techless autocasts them either way. I guess
Exactly.
the problem here, though, I guess I don't know, maybe minor, maybe major, is trying to fit in two endless spells in your list, depending on how you
Hmm.
play your units. But yeah, it's just really easy to do.
Yeah. Man, because like the thing about like these battle tactics, like even if they're like situational in a sense, like there's a lot of opportunities where you could even, you know, even with like, even if like a battle tactic is like situational, having like something that's easily achievable in the back pocket for like that situation, it was great because like it's opportunities for scoring. So I'm really thankful for, you know, battle tactics for this faction, which we
Yeah,
did not have
they
before.
actually leaned really well into our strengths as a faction for these battle tactics.
Yes. Uh, they're not okay. Again, mentioning DOK. I
Yeah,
don't think they're as brain dead as DOK, some of the DOK battle tactics, but these are strong.
yeah.
These are great. Okay, so that's Hysh made manifest. Lastly, we've got ignore the odds. Pick one LRL unit and one enemy unit within 1 inch of each other. The enemy unit that you've picked must be destroyed, and that LRL unit you picked must not be destroyed. Fantastic. Jesus.
Yeah, it's great, especially because lightning
Good.
reactions were spoiled. We don't have to pick one unit, hope that that unit doesn't get destroyed. You pick two immediately, so you can just gang up on one unit. I've used this before actually with
Yeah.
with uh Eltharion and another unit. It's great, especially because you don't have to stay within 1 inches.
Yeah, just at the start of the turn when you pick the battle tactic, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so you can just like retreat. There's like a bunch of things you could do. The only conditions, are those two units starting beside each other, and that enemy unit being destroyed, and your LRL unit, not being destroyed. So
Yeah,
pretty easy to do on your turn.
you could bring a cow as well. Just bring it to
Yeah,
bear on that enemy unit. And also, I think the
cows,
keyword
stone
here,
guard.
yeah, I think the
Mhm.
keyword here is that the LRL unit has to survive. It doesn't have to destroy the enemy unit. So
Yep.
if you bring Kron Spines in your list, right, good work.
Although I'm not sure if Cron Spine units get the keyword. I'm not too sure.
Well, the thing is, you have to pick one LRL unit. That LRL unit has to survive, right? It doesn't have to kill
Yeah.
the enemy unit. So if you could fight with a Kron Spine, kill it with a Kron Spine instead, then I guess that works as well.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. I see where you're getting at. Yeah. Very true. Okay. So I guess that wraps up battle tactics. Uh, Overall thoughts. I think I know what you're thinking.
Yeah, these are great battle tactics, and I'm really happy that they lean in on our strengths.
Yeah, we are spoiled for choice.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I think this is like in my opinion, from the battle texts that I've read in the three books that I've read so far, I think this is a good like I think this is a good balance between having battle tactics that are not only thematic to the faction, but also situationally achievable battle tactics that you could have you know that you could have on you to execute. And they also incentivize you playing the way that your faction like should play as
Mm-hmm.
well, because I think at the end of the day, GHB GHB battle tactics are probably going to be like your go-tos most of the time, like off the top of your head. But then like when you spot an opportunity to do some of the battle tactics you want to do from like a tome, like that's when like strong tome battle tactics really come into play.
Yeah,
What are your
and
thoughts?
for me, I think it's entirely possible to just play with our battle tactics, right? Conserve Aether Quartz, blind the enemy, Fish
Yeah.
Made Manifest, ignore the odds. These are four battle tactics that lean in really well to our strengths, and well, I guess not as brain dead as the OK strats, but easy enough for us to complete. So just 4 turns of our battle tactics, and then you have like two more and the entire GHB battle tactics to figure out. Yeah, it's fun.
Yeah, exactly. I've also spotted like you know, wait, let me just go through these real quick. I've also spotted that they kind of like incentivize, like I mentioned earlier, CR would be good with these because two of these rely on an ether quartz like being conserved. And then I also think these we have two which are great early game, which are great for like early game or in a situation where you have you have an enemy army that doesn't have wizards or just doesn't have the unbind potential to unbind your spells. And so the battle tactics that I'm referring to are blind the enemy and Hysh made manifest. So
Yeah,
you know,
especially if you take first turn. I mean, we always want to take first turn anyway, I think.
yeah,
Then,
most of
yeah,
the
it just
time.
works out. Especially if you deploy in such a way that you can't be unbound. Blind the
Yeah.
Enemy and Hysh Made Manifest are really good options.
Yeah. And anything else with regards to battle tactics? Because I think we can only find so many words to use to gush about these things.
Yeah, I'm good,
Yeah.
man.
Yeah. I'm good too. All right. So, allies. We only had one ally back in the day. That was Ideneth Deepkin, and that did not make any lore sense at all.
Yeah.
But now we have three more. That's the Daughters of Cain, Sylvaneth, and Stormcast Eternals.
Well, again, Idonet Deepkin doesn't make sense much lore wise. I guess Tyrion saved them from Teclis, so that what makes us allies. Daughters of Cain as well. There are lore bits where they kill Lumineth Realm Lords elves. So I don't know how to feel about that. But for me, I mean Sylvaneth also. I guess it works out. Alariel and Teclis do talk in Broken Realms Teclis. Stormcast, of course, Sigmar loves all
Yeah, he
order
wants
factions.
everyone to be friends, to cooperate.
Yeah, it's his Avengers. And honestly, Stormcast is one of the reasons why I think Lambent Light was removed. Because again, long strikes,
Long strikes.
judicators.
Yep.
Yeah, it's disgusting.
Rerolling hits with those guys trying to fish mortals. Yikes.
Yeah, for the long strikes. For the judicators,
Mhm.
every hit counts as 2 hits with their crossbows. So yeah, it's
Yeah.
huge.
Or with their skybolt bows, sixes are mortals, so kind of like sentinels,
Yeah,
sort
in a
of.
way.
Yeah, in a way. Uh, and of course, Vanguard Raptors, mortals on sixes,
Mm-hmm.
nasty. Right. So with Idoneth Yukin, I didn't find, with Idoneth Yukin personally, I didn't find as much success trying to integrate their units into ours because they kind of lose their battle traits. And so they don't have tides, they don't have like Forgotten Nightmares. And so people have kind of brought up, why don't you put let's say like a Keeling King or like more Sargard or into like your armies for punching power or something like that. But then it's harder to protect them because they don't have Forgotten Nightmares and you can't. It's harder to screen.
Yeah.
You know what I mean.
There were also, yeah, I know what you mean. It's very limited. I mean, there were builds that used thralls. I believe those were the shooting Namarti. And
Reavers.
Ishlane
Reavers are
Guard.
the shooting ones.
Oh, yeah, that unit took advantage of Lambent Light. I guess now that's not an option because it's gone. Ishlane Guard with their 2-up biovoltaic barrier is still really good in this army, I think. But of course, now that we have more allies, they are outshone by other options, I believe.
Yeah. Which brings us to like the new additions, Daughters of Cain. For most of the Daughters of Cain like roster, you know, bow snakes can do what bow snakes just or sandals can do what bow snakes can do. Uh, Not sure you would bring snakes. Not sure you would bring witch elves. But what I would bring is actually the Kinarai, and those are like the harpy ladies, and
Yeah,
they're pretty cheap units. Like I think they're around like 90 to like 100 per five, and they deep strike. So you can put them in reserve, and you can pop them anywhere on the board 9 inches away from enemies, like on
they're
your
flying
movement
as
phase.
well.
Yep, flying as well. And they can move after combat or shooting, depending on which variant you take. So these guys would be pretty good objective cappers
Hmm.
and screeners. Like just Lumineth doesn't have like cheap units, so having these cheap disposable mobile units to play around with, I think it's a I think it's a great potentially for a list.
Yeah, I'd take Kinnarai too, or maybe Avatar of Cain. I'm not too sure yet, but
Yeah.
there's room for experimentation in Daughters of Cain.
Yep. For Sylvaneth 2, I'm not as like read about I'm not as well read about their tome, but I do recall them having like teleporters as well. I think,
Three
correct me if I'm
Revenants.
wrong, Tree Revenants, yeah. If they still do teleport now,
I think they still
as
do.
per the well, if they still do,
I think
then
they
that's an
still do.
alternative. Yeah, that's an alternative to Daughters of Cain units. Sorry, I
Yeah,
just remembered. Shadow Stalkers also teleport, like the Tree Revenant. So that's like potentially a unit you could use from Daughters of Cain. Uh, so going back to Sylvaneth, you have teleporters. You could bring trees. You could bring like
I think
you
the
could
biggest
bring
win here is Spirit of Durthu as an ally. Really
yep,
potent, good beat stick, which is sorely lacking for us.
yeah,
Yeah.
actually, yeah.
Also, Kurnoth
Kurnoth
Hunters.
potentially, yes, Kurnoth.
Not sure if you'd bring great bows or great swords or great scythes, but Kurnoth Hunters are generally a good pick, I think.
Yeah. I'm not as well versed in Sylvaneth to really say, but there's a lot of potential there. I'm grateful to have them. And lastly, I think this is yeah, I think Stormcast Eternals might be the best ally we've gotten. I'm not
Yeah,
too
it
sure.
might be. I mean, I think they're the best ally we have right now, especially because Stormcast roster has a lot of redundancies. They have a lot of units that do the same thing, and we're actually spoiled for choice because they have everything.
Yeah. They can fill in like they can fill in gaps in our roster. We don't have enough killing power. We get fulminators, for example. We don't have enough shooting that can deal tons of hits. We get judicators, with crossbows.
Long strikes,
Um,
even actually.
yeah, long strikes even. There's a lot of potential there. They got a lot of they have a wide range.
Yeah, it could also
I
take dragons.
Yeah, dragons.
Yes, bring back
Uh,
dragons to the elves.
if yeah, this is your chance to kit bash dragons on elves. Okay, you can
Yes.
bring some guys as allies now. Uh,
GW, if you're listening, bring back Imric. He belongs to
yeah,
us.
bring back Imric. Maybe bring him with Tyrion.
Yeah,
Just
actually.
just a couple ideas.
Also,
But
Celestin Prime. I don't know
oh,
how good it
Celestin,
is, but yeah.
yes, he could be. Yeah, that's right. Very good beat stick. I think the only things that would really suffer would be things that need to teleport down from heaven to really make the best potential to bring out their potential, like annihilators, because I do recall Stormcast Eternal Science of the Storm being like the battle trait where you teleport from the sky like into the battlefield, and that's not
Yeah.
built into War Scrolls.
It's not a war scroll. It's an allegiance ability, I think. Though I
Yeah.
did have success earlier because I borrowed my
Mhm.
friend's annihilators. I used the ones
Oh
with
yeah.
shields, not grand hammers, because the ones with shields, 200 points. Again, with allies, you could take a reinforced unit of 6, and they have a 2-up save. And you can put Mystic Shield
Okay.
on them and
Nice.
wards, right? With the
Yeah.
protection of Hysh, not protection of Techless. So if you're not bringing Techless, protection of Hysh 9 inches
Hmm.
makes Annihilators a really good screen that could pack a punch.
Yeah. If you can find a way to get them aboard. I think they're pretty good, like especially on the charge with the mortal wounds.
Yeah.
They're a bit slow though, from what I remember. They're like 4-inch moves, so
Yeah, they
that's
are
probably the
pretty
only
slow,
challenge.
but they're better than our current screen right now at 2-up save. And it
Yeah,
gives us counter punching power. You let them get charged, you charge back with your wardens. It works.
yeah. And if that's not cutting for you, there's always fulminators.
Yeah,
Nasty.
Fulminators.
They're nasty. So okay. Any other thoughts with allies before we proceed?
Not much really, aside from the fact that they gave us allies, and these allies are the reasons why some of our spells got removed. Like case in point, Lambent Light.
Lambalite. Right. With regards to spells, I kind of forgot to mention on the stream on the video that the wind mage and stone mage spell lores kind of got cut in half. They used to be six spells each. Now they're just three. Yeah. All right. Got anything else? Closing thoughts. So, how do you feel about the new Battletome so
New
far, besides
Battletome,
units?
mixed feelings. Our Deep Thinkers is good, and our battle tactics are good, but a lot of it is a bit harder now. I mean, I guess Alarith is there. It's been buffed, still preferred it if they reduced rend instead of ignored. And the biggest win, or sorry, the biggest loss here really is Huracan. They got a lot of their stuff removed with barely any compensation, I think. So it's tough. And it sort of changes, well, the entire tome, not just Huracan, will change how we are going to play Lumineth moving forward.
Yeah, I agree. There's a there's a lot of like the fun and flavor that got removed. Uh, in my opinion, some of like the experimental stuff, like let's say like the command abilities, like per great nation, weird things like Alumni having a pregame move, even though I don't think the design philosophy behind the army, uh, you know, allows that. Lambent Light being kind of like a crazy thing that we had.
Yeah, actually,
Kind of
Lambent
missed.
Light,
Mhm.
Voice of the Mountain being gone, and as well as emotional transference, removes two of our
Yeah,
most potent strategies: Lambent Light shooting and the Bravery Bomb. So we're kind of lost with our new tome. We still have to figure out what good strategies can come from it.
yeah, definitely. Uh, so going back to what I mentioned earlier, like the fun jank is kind of gone for me. Some of like the tricks, some of the tricks are some of the tricks have been gutted, some of them have been removed like entirely. But I'm grateful that we do have more consistency. We have better internal balance, in my opinion. We have more. I think we're more competitive now with the better scoring potential as a result of the battle tactics, which I hope your local tournaments are allowing you to use.
Yeah,
But
it
like
gives us
overall,
an
yeah,
edge.
yep,
Though,
consistency, better internal balance, uh, more things to play around with, less restrictions with regards to like command traits, uh, artifacts and such, because you're not locked into the Great Nation ones anymore.
yeah, lots of goods, lots of ups and downs. I mean, our battle tactics are really good, but in contrast, grand strats are difficult compared to other grand
Yes,
strats from other tomes.
probably gonna take the GHB ones if you want grand strats.
Yep, I agree.
Yeah. So if you had to guess, describe the tome in one word, what word would you choose?
Wow, that's really difficult. I'd say simplicity, because they made a lot of our stuff easier to understand. I mean, admittedly, before this tome, Lumineth as a faction had a very high skill floor. It takes a lot to master it. Now it's a bit easier, a bit more welcoming to the newbies who really like Lumineth models.
Yeah, I'll have to agree. I like how they kind of just streamlined especially with the battle traits. They've just cleaned it up because I felt like the past Lumineth books um, were kind of released without like a final read through. Some of it's kind of messy and doesn't make sense. Like, why is the cat floor ability in the battle traits section?
Mhm.
Why aren't the sub army abilities inside the war scrolls and such and such? So yeah, I guess that concludes our discussion on the new Lumineth Realm Lords Battletome.
Yeah, if you have any thoughts or if you agree with us or not agree with us, just leave some comments down below. And if you like this
Yeah.
video and want to see more, leave a like and subscribe.
On Facebook, you can find us on facebook.com/Wartilio. On YouTube, we are Wartilio. And on Twitter, we are at Wartilio. My name is Hans,
And my name's Johan.
and we are Wartilio. Thank you for watching.